flexibility, convenience, opportunity. Find your digital advantage in the Keeneland Digital Sales Ring. Backed by the most trusted name in thoroughbred sales. Visit KeenelandDigital.com to learn more.
Good morning. It is 9:36, Wednesday, January 12th. This is the TDN Writers Room, presented by Keeneland. My name is Joe Bianca. I'm the associate editor of the Thoroughbred Daily News. And it only took 119 or so episodes, but I think we finally have quality audio and video on all three of us. We did it, guys.
Yes, we finally did it. I think I was always the weakest link in that, so I hope I look good today. But anyways, hey, and by the way, 38 days, just 38 days till opening day at Fonner Park. And, you know, after the show, we need to discuss whether we want to go to Fonner to do our 150th show or something like that.
That's Bill Finley, by the way. Bill Finley did not say his name because he gets just so excited about Fonner Park opening.
Everyone knows when it's Fonner Park, it's definitely Finley.
It's anonymous.
And Jonathan Green, general manager, DJ Stable, and Bill. You know, I would even pay for your flight to go out to Fonner Park if you wanted to do the show live from there. Joe and I will stay in our homes, but if you wanted to go and be the man of the people and go out to Fonner, I'm sure we could find it in the budget to do so.
Well, let's talk about that after the show.
After the show. But since we're talking about dates and numbers and everything like that, we're 16 weeks to the Kentucky Derby. And did you guys know that 4 out of the past 5 Kentucky Derby winners only broke their maiden at this time? So 4 of the past 5 Kentucky Derby winners were still A other thans going into 16 weeks before the Derby. Think about that while you're looking at your future pools.
Yeah, yet another reason I was going to say why future pools are suckers bets. And also I noticed that John wasn't offering the jet to go to Fonner Park. He just said
that's only for you, Joe. That's only gassed up and ready for Joe Bianca. And
Bill sitting in my
for some reason, every time you went on that plane, you asked to have your nuts warmed. I don't know why that is.
The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Keeneland. The Keeneland January Horses of All Ages sale is going on right now and runs through this Friday, January 14th. The catalog is available online at january.keeneland.com. Book 1 began on Tuesday. The sale had to be pushed back a day due to the snowstorms in Lexington. Session was highlighted by leading buyer and friend of the show, 3 Chimneys, who purchased 3 of the top 4 horses of the day, including the session topper, Princess Lily, who is a quality road daughter of Grade 1 winner Karina Mia, for $750,000. The session's average of $72,350, up 23.22% from a year ago. Book 1 will wrap up today, and Book 2 will be held this Thursday and Friday. Still time to get involved. All right, so we have some new news on the Bob Baffert legal front. I know you're all very, very excited about that. You can't get enough Bob Baffert and Clark Brewster and Craig Robertson legal news. But there was some new movement in terms of Baffert potentially trying to sue Churchill Downs. We already had the whole saga with Baffert versus Naira last year. We won't go into that. But there was a lot of talk and a lot of speculation about whether Baffert was going to try to sue Churchill Downs to try to get his horses included in the Kentucky Derby and get them Derby points. Joe Drape got a draft complaint written by Clark Brewster and some of Baffert's lawyers saying, basically, from what I can read, making the same argument that they made against Naira, that his due process rights were violated. Now, the problem with that is Churchill Downs is a private company. It's different than Naira. The only reason that Bob Baffert got injunctive relief before Saratoga, the only reason why it's an ongoing thing with Naira is that Naira is a quasi-state entity, so you could make the argument that it was a quasi-government agency that was denying a citizen his due process rights. Churchill Downs is its own private thing. It has the right to exclude anybody it wants. And as Bill Karstantian said in the quote in Joe Drape's story, he said Bob Baffert signed a paper before the Kentucky Derby agreeing to, abide by all the medication rules, and the horse Medina Spirit failed a test after the Derby. So he was in violation of the document that he signed. So I don't know. Obviously, I'm not a legal expert. I don't know where this is going, but it seems to me he has a smaller percentage chance of winning against Churchill Downs than he did against Naira. And there really was no movement on this front for about a year or so. Like there was really all quiet on the Western Front. Also reminds me, why the hell have we not gotten an official ruling on the Derby from the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission? Like they haven't even held a hearing on it. It seems to me like Baffert is unlikely to succeed here, but I wonder what Bill and John think.
Well, and you're right, Joe. All along we were wondering, he was suing everybody and their brother, but had left Churchill Downs in Kentucky alone up till this point. And again, I'm not a lawyer, but I've seen a lot of these things over the years and paid a lot of attention to this in my writing and reporting. I don't think Baffert has any chance to win this for the reasons you just said. I mean, the courts have time and time again upheld the rights of private property owners to exclude anybody. I mean, Joe, they could exclude you if they wanted to, and then they just can't. They don't necessarily have to have a reason. They just say we don't like Joe Bianco and we don't want him hanging out at our racetrack.
Wouldn't be the first establishment to do that.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But I think I get what is going on here. It's hard. I feel like I should have gone to law school because that's all we write about anymore is Baffert, Zayat, Service, Navarro, crimes, lawsuits, etc. But I'm wondering if the play here is to try to get an injunction, which I think he probably can do that. Just, a couple weeks before the Derby, look, you got to give us an injunction to let us run while we try to work this way through the courts. That may actually work. And if that's the case, I think Churchill would have no recourse other than to let him run in this year's Kentucky Derby. But having said that, if he does do that, it's kind of just kicking the can down the road. Right now, he's banned from the 2022 and 2023 Derbies. If he gets to run in 2022, and I don't know if he can, but then I think the ban would just extend to whenever it does start, and maybe he would be banned from the 23 and 24 Derbies. But, I'm guessing that's what this is all about. But I know he's got good lawyers, and they've done a good job on his behalf, but I don't think they have a snowball's chance in hell to actually win this.
I just want to follow up on that with Bill. I think this is why it was big when Churchill announced that the Baffert horses would not accrue qualifying points along the way. So even if he gets an injunction, like, do those horses then retroactively get points and can qualify for the Derby? Like, that's what's unclear to me.
Well, I don't know the answer to that, Joe, but I would guess that that's part of their lawsuit. That not only do we want to get back Bob into the Derby, but you got to start giving these horses points. But again, a lot of this is just guesswork. I don't really know, but if they let him run, if he gets an injunction to let him run in the Derby, yet Corniche and all the rest of the horses have no points, then what's the point of that? So I think, if you're doing A, you got to go for B as well. And again, I would think that the courts, if they decide that Baffert is deserving of some sort of injunctive relief, probably would say, yeah, you got to give these horses the points as well.
So here's my question then, and I honestly don't know the answer. Who's in charge of the accounting for the points? Is it Churchill Downs or is it an independent group?
No, it's Churchill Downs. Okay. They came up with the whole system. They came up with how many points are in each race. So, whether it's a 100-point race, a 50-point race, whatnot. But, again, and I feel a little bit uncomfortable talking about this because it is, once again, just guessing. But I believe a court could tell them what to do when it comes to these points. I can't see a scenario where he's allowed to run in the Derby, but his horses aren't given points. And look, and he may not be able to run in the Derby. But just reading between the lines, I think that's what's going on.
Right. And again, we don't know the answer to this necessarily, but what's to say that if a horse of his goes to another trainer and starts earning points, and then is it allowed to run even though technically it was trained by Baffert? Like, there's a lot of muddy waters that we're heading into with this.
Well, that's why, I think this is kind of crunch time now for the owners of potential Derby horses with Baffert, because these points are going to start to really add up in the next month or two. I mean, obviously the biggest points races are in April or closer to the Derby, but still, horses are earning points right now. He ran 1-2 in the Sham and got no points out of it. So it's really starting the rubber's going to meet the road here for the Baffert owners. And, if they are going to mount a legal challenge, it kind of has to happen now. And so it has time to work through the courts.
And Joe, Bill, just from studying it the past couple of years when, trying to figure out and handicap how many points you really need, you need about 22, 23 points to guarantee yourself one of the top 20 spots to get in. So, Joe, to your point, even though the next couple of Kentucky Derby preps are lower points, theoretically, you win a 20-point race or you finish second in a 40-point race, and you pretty much are on the cusp of getting into the Derby. Now, again, unless unless you're going to run in another prep and the horse runs poorly, technically you have enough points to get in. You may not run at that point, but you do have enough points. And even last year, and I know it was like a COVID type year anyway, last year there were horses that were getting in that had in the teens as far as points go. So it's really going to be interesting, especially when we do our handicapping pick. We do our Kentucky Derby contest. You start going into like the third, fourth, fifth pick, and there may be Baffert horses on there, and maybe you take it as a flyer, with the hopes that somehow the horse either changes hands or to a new trainer, or the injunction is in place if we're taking it out of this playbook, and all of a sudden the horse is eligible, gets points retroactively and is eligible to run. So it's going to be really difficult as owners also to handicap whether or not your horse legitimately has a chance to get in.
I just want to interject and again, trying to read between the lines and figure out what's happened. Baffert, literally has 50, 60 3-year-olds that at some point could be good enough to get into the Kentucky Derby, and maybe 5 or 6 that are on, most people's top 25 lists or something like that. And as we speak on January 12th, not one owner has taken away a 3-year-old from him. I know they have a little bit more time to really make their decision, but I'm wondering if Baffert he must be telling the owners, my lawyers are really smart. We're going to file this lawsuit. We're going to win. We're going to run in the Kentucky Derby, and I'm going to be the trainer. Stick with me. Again, that seems to be the logical scenario, because if we don't see, you're right, John. You have a time that the points in these races like the Sham are very small compared to, like the San Diego Derby and Florida Derby. That I don't think there's any urgency to take the horses away from him and get the points now. But yeah, we're getting there. I think that second round of preps, the Fountain of Youth, San Felipe, Rebel, the race before the major preps, around that time, will owners start to get a little nervous? I wait a minute, you're going to run in the San Felipe, but I'm not going to get any points. Well, maybe I ought to pick up the phone and send the horse to Todd Pletcher. We'll see.
I just wanted to read a couple of quotes from the story from Bill Carstange. I'm no fan of Churchill Downs, as you know, but there were some pretty forceful quotes. One of them said, "This threatened lawsuit is yet another tactic from Mr. Baffert's well-worn playbook of obfuscating the facts, inventing excuses to explain positive drug tests, and attempting to blame others to avoid responsibility for his own actions." That's pretty strong to me. He goes, "We're considering any and all legal options to countersue and set the record straight and ensure Mr. Baffert is held accountable for all the reputational damage he has caused us. The irony is not lost on us that despite all of his violations, he is the one threatening to file lawsuits claiming to be aggrieved." And just one more, he goes, "I continue to hold out hope that Mr. Baffert will finally take responsibility for what has occurred under his care and on his watch, and we can move on to running this year's Derby." Pretty forceful stuff, I think. It's a different thing trying to sue NYRA, which is basically a not-for-profit, like entity, and Churchill Downs, which is the most for-profit entity in the business. So I'm not to disparage any of NYRA's lawyers. Like, I'm sure they have competent people on their legal team, but a major corporation generally has bigger, more high-profile, more high-powered lawyers than a place like NYRA. So I don't know if he is promising that to his owners. I don't know. I don't know that this is a sure thing. The NYRA thing certainly wasn't a sure thing. This seems even more unlikely that he's gonna win this. But you're right that he could get this injunction that'll kind of just delay the process for a little bit. But yeah, crunch time coming up for these horses if you want points.
Speaking of Baffert, guys, there's been some interesting revelations, I guess, would be, of people releasing their Eclipse Award votes. Now, Baffert is not a legitimate candidate to be Trainer of the Year. He had a very good year, as he always does, but he is not really in the running based on his credentials. And then there's the big controversy. What do you do with Medina Spirit? Do you give him credit for the Kentucky Derby win or not? But now it looks like there's some voters, and I've seen 4 or 5 people, including Joe Nevels from the Pollock Report, very respected guy, who is not going to vote for any Baffert horses for the Eclipse Awards. I mean, Corniche should be a slam dunk to be obviously should be a unanimous winner of the 2-year-old male division. John's favorite horse, Gamine, I voted for her. She deserves to be the filly and mare sprint champion. I voted for Essential Quality, but not because Medina Spirit tested positive. I just thought, even with the Kentucky Derby, I thought Essential Quality had the better year and the more complete year of the two. To me, that's going too far. You're penalizing Corniche. Let's take him as an example. I mean, couldn't be a more obvious Eclipse Award winner. There's zero signs that there was any impropriety with his campaign, no drug positives, no reason to believe or any knowledge that he was ever, quote unquote, doped at any time. Yeah, people are mad at Baffert and people, want to run him out of the game. But when it comes to this, you're supposed to you're supposed to be voting for the horse. You're not supposed to take the connections into account. I completely disagree. I voted for Baffert horses that I thought deserved to be champions.
Yeah, and I would just jump in and say, if you're going to, as a writer and as a voter, if you're going to start to go down this path, then do you look at other trainers that you think are fishy and say, okay, well, now I'm not going to vote for this person's horse, even though, again, they didn't test positive for anything and there's no obvious impropriety other than just, I think that this trainer, doesn't do the right thing. I mean, because there would be, I'm not going to name names on this, but there would be other horses on this ballot that are very high up on the list where you would say, well, if I'm going down this path and I'm going to say, where there's smoke, there's fire, and make an assumption, make a leap of faith, then I'm not voting for XYZ as well. That wasn't a pun. I mean, for XY horse or ABC horse, because of that. And I mean, you can really start to unravel and go down, a very, very interesting path by doing this. I understand from baseball writers, why they won't vote for certain players, especially those who did test positive, even though they had tremendous careers or extended their careers maybe because of impropriety. But this is going down a really interesting path, for not only horses that are under the care of a trainer that's in question, but also for horses themselves that have never tested positive for any illegal substance, yet they're kind of getting painted because of the barn that they're in.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. It's different if the horse tested positive, like, if last year when Gamine had those 2 positive tests, if you didn't want to vote for her for champion, I still think she was the best filly sprinter in the country. But if you didn't want to vote for her because of the 2 positives, then I understand that. And if you don't want to vote for Medina Spirit, even though, like I said in the last segment, somehow there's still been no resolution or even close to a resolution on the Derby thing, if you're gonna take the assumption that he's going to get disqualified from the Derby because of a drug test and you don't want to vote for him, that's totally fine. But for a horse like Corniche, who doesn't have any whiff of impropriety, like John said and Bill said, like I don't get that. And like John makes a good point about a slippery slope, because this is a game, unfortunately, where there are whispers about a lot of people and a lot of people at the very top of the game. So if you're going to take that route and say, I'm not going to vote for any Baffert horses because I think he's cheating, you better be damn sure the people who are training the horses that you are going to vote for are clean as well. And I don't think there's a lot of people that would like necessarily make that case for every single trainer that's on the ballot and that has a horse who could potentially win. Like, I think there are too many whispers and too many suspicions within the industry for a lot of people that's not, you can't be consistent in that way. You can't say, well, Baffert's dirty, but this guy I know is clean. I don't think you can say that. Kind of reminds me a little bit. I don't know if you guys have heard, but Aaron Rodgers is up for NFL MVP. He's like one of the top contenders. He's a quarterback for the Green Bay Packers, for anyone who doesn't know. And he's a great player, first ballot Hall of Famer. He's one of the best quarterbacks who's ever lived. But earlier this year, he got in a little bit of hot water because he lied about being vaccinated. They asked him in the preseason, "Are you vaccinated?" Tried to dance around it a little bit, but he said yeah. And then it turned out he tested positive for COVID. He wasn't vaccinated. He had to miss a game. He went on this big, tried to save his reputation tour and said even crazier things about COVID and the vaccine. So he made himself out to be an asshole, honestly. Like, as someone who likes Aaron Rodgers as a player and has admired him for a long time, thought he was a pretty cool guy, pretty smart guy. It's changed my opinion of him. But that has nothing to do with his accomplishments and his exploits on the field. It has absolutely nothing to do with it. If you want to remove every jerk from the Hall of Fame in every sport, it's going to be a long process to try to do that. And Aaron Rodgers' vaccine stance has nothing to do with whether or not he deserves to be NFL MVP. Unless the horse has tested positive and the horse has been DQ'd and there's controversy surrounding the individual horse, it shouldn't matter that Bob Baffert trains it. Either the horse is a deserving champion based on his accomplishments, or he's not. And Corniche is obviously a deserving champion. I say this as someone who has been very hard on Bob Baffert and thinks that the racing has let him get away with a lot of stuff for a long time. Don't think that this is the way to take a stance against him. I just, there's too much of a slippery slope, like John said. The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Keeneland. Mentioned before that Keeneland January is going on through this Friday, January 14th. All the sessions start at 10 a.m. We mentioned last week the Gun Runner No Guarantee season that was being auctioned off for a charity to support the people who were devastated by the Kentucky tornadoes. You can read in today's TDN about that. It sold for $130,000. And I know John has a couple of notes on Keeneland as well.
Yeah, Joe, one thing that really stood out just in the first day, I mean, aside from all the numbers being higher than they were last year, which is tremendous, and the RNA numbers are lower than they were last year, which is, again, another positive sign for the January sale, is, the Justify foals are still the story. And there were 5 that went for the ring yesterday, ranging from $150,000 to $410,000. And almost every level in between. And I know we got a very, very, very short list of top yearlings, for the sale. And 2 of the Justifies were on there. Both were being sold by Sequel Bloodstock. So congratulations to Becky Thomas for selling her 2 fillies for $175,000 and $300,000 respectively. Justify getting it done.
I have a suspicion we're going to talk about Justify in a few minutes, but definitely get involved at Keeneland. There's still time. The second session goes on today. 2 more sessions after today, Thursday and Friday. We'll be right back after this message from Keeneland.
Start the new year strong at the Keeneland January Horses of All Ages sale. Make the most of your 2022. With a new year comes new, exciting opportunities at Keeneland. Be there at the first sale of the year, beginning January 10th.
Speightstown. Munning. Echo Town.
It's Echo Town for Joe Talamo, and Echo Town raced away.
And Echo Town is drawing away in the stretch. Echo Town wins the Allen Jerkin Stakes.
A sire line so prolific, it repeats itself. Echo Town.
The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Coolmore. In the first session of Keeneland January, as John mentioned, Justify's progeny continued to be very popular and high demand. Triple Crown winner was responsible for the session's priciest filly. 2-year-old daughter of champion Take Charge Brandy, named Justly. I was going to say named Justify? Named Justly, who sold for $410,000. Justify was the day's leading sire by both gross and average, and his studmate Munnings was a close second on the gross side. Also in racing, Caravaggio registered his 28th winner on Sunday with City Runner, who won at Southwell in England. He was a leading freshman sire last year with 4 graded stakes performers, 8 stakes performers this year. He stands at Ashford for $35,000 after relocating from Coolmore's base in Ireland 2 years ago. I've said it before. I could not be more excited to see Caravaggio's crops now that he's moved to America. I think he's going to be an absolute monster sire. And we've seen a couple of them in America so far, but now we're going to start to see a lot more. And I'm super excited about that. I think he's going to be great. And I feel like it's not a Coolmore bit if I don't mention Cupid. I don't have anything specific to say about Cupid, but go see Cupid for $5,000. He's really coming up. So we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I think when the November handle numbers came out, I said that wagering was going to top $12 billion for the first time in 2009. It did. That was an easy prediction to make. A little over $12.2 billion was wagered on horse races in the U.S. in 2021. First time since 2009 when 12.3 billion was bet. Wagering peaked in 2003 when 15.18 billion was bet. I don't think we'll ever get back there. Listen, I think this is great news. Bill had an interesting thought, though, in his week in review. He talked to Pat Cummings about how we don't know necessarily where this increased handle is coming from. If it's just increased action from the computer, the CAW, the computer assisted wagers, not necessarily a good thing, because that just means that more whales are in the pool and fewer minnows and racing's chasing away the smaller bettor. I don't know if I buy that. Honestly, Pat's a very smart guy. Bill, the jury's out on him, how smart he is, but he listens to smart people. So I think it's an interesting point and an interesting context, and I wish that we had more ideas about where this money is coming from. But my question is, why would that just be happening this year? Why would the handle just be going up this year based on the CAW wagerers? Why has that not happened in the past 5 years, 10 years or so? Obviously, they're getting more involved, but it seemed like an aberrational jump this year in handle, and I don't know that you can necessarily ascribe that to CAW wagerers. But what do you think, Bill?
Well, yeah, John, that's a good point. And John's favorite expression, I don't mean to pee in racing's Cheerios, when they come out, when they, what on the surface looks like very good news with this handle, and it well could be. But one of the problems is there's zero transparency when it comes to this, so far as how much these guys are betting, where they're betting, what tracks they're betting on, and there never will be. This is a big secret that is protected by everybody involved. I've never once seen anybody speak publicly about this or go on the record from an ADW or one of these like elite betting operations from Curacao and Costa Rica and that sort of thing, or racetrack manager. But you just, because of that, you have to wonder. Joe, I would. You said that why would there be an aberration this year? I would make the same argument. If it has nothing to do with the computer guys, why was there an aberration and just Tom, Dick, and Harry contributed more and bet more this year to make the handle go up? And I will say this, I don't know. I don't know what's behind this, but I'm telling you, every single time you come out, every track XYZ comes out with this, we had a record handle at this meet, we were up 17%. They're not telling you the whole story. What contributed to that? And if it is the CAW players, this is not only not a good news story for horse racing, it is a really bad story for horse racing, because these guys are a major threat to the long-term sustainability of the pari-mutuel markets. They're driving everybody out, and this is a problem that racing is going to have to, faces. And, I don't want to be the sky is falling and over the top here. But if you really look at this and the economics of this, of what's happening here, this is a real problem for horse racing that is not going to go away. So, I'm just speculating what happened here. And you say, well, why would it be more this year? Well, because these guys are winning more, they're getting bolder, they're betting more. Maybe there used to be, and this is just maybes and guesses, maybe there used to be 10 of these groups out there. Now there's 15. Again, all questions that we have no answers for. So, when racing comes out and says handle is up 10%, well, that's not the complete story, and we're never going to get the complete story. That's the point I was trying to make.
Well, I mean, the thing is, there was a variable, though, last year with the COVID shutdown and racing getting the spotlight more to itself. And just in general, racing has a lot more face time now than it did in the past 10, 15 years in terms of a day-to-day visible racing product. That's new. That's a new thing, relatively speaking, in racing. And, Naira and Fox Sports have been at the forefront of that. And I don't know, maybe I'm too optimistic, but I would attribute the handle gains to that, absent evidence of something else. And like you said, the problem is that there is no transparency, and these guys are so secretive, and there's just so little data on how much they're wagering, where they're betting. And certain AEWs know who they are. Like we saw Naira, try to restrict their action last year. And I think it made a difference. They did it in some exotic pools. They cut them off at a certain point in the win pool, so that you didn't see these huge late odds drops like we used to see. But yeah, I agree that there should be a lot more transparency on this, and just more transparency in general from the bet takers, because that's how I think we really get this data and suss out what it means. is can we get from Naira or from Twin Spires, from ExpressBet, whoever it is, how many new signups did you have in the past year? How many did you have in the past month? What's the average of what these guys and these girls are betting per day? You know, were they never horse bettors before? Did they come back aboard at some point? That's the kind of data that we really need to figure out what the handle numbers mean. I just refuse to say it's a negative when the handle tops $12 billion, especially because there's so many negative things going on in the business. This seems like one that you can point to and say, hey, there's more money being wagered on U.S. races, no?
You know what, Joe? You make very good points, and you very well could be right. I mean, there is the phenomenon of the Naira shows obviously are a good thing on Fox. The whole idea of the guy when the NBA and NHL and everything was shut down had to have some action and went to bet on the fourth at Aqueduct and said, hey, this is cool. I like horse racing, and kept betting. I'm perfectly willing to say that those are all possibilities, but we're both agreeing and disagreeing at the same time. And the point you made is the major point that I'm trying to make. Wouldn't you really like to know the answer to this? And, rather than just three guys here sitting around, throwing out, just throwing things against the wall. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And, that's the real issue, that there is no and there's not going to be either. Nobody's going to have a come to Jesus moment and say, we're going to tell you all the business of these CAW players and all the business of our ADW. These are businesses, and they don't want people to know don't want their competitors to know what's going on. And also the CAW players, guys are betting billions of dollars. They want to keep their privacy.
I get that. I get that part of it. But I just, in terms of like, if you're Naira Bets and you got like 40,000 more signups this year than you did in 2020 or whatever it is, why would you not want to publicize that? Why would you not want to make that known to the public and try to, build off of that and build off some positive PR? And I just don't get it. I don't get why, if these ADWs are doing better, they can't make that information public. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's they don't want to make it public because it's mostly just the bigger bettors who are putting more money through the windows. But I don't know. I would love to see that and hear that data, no matter what it reveals. And just to piggyback off that, there was a story last week that Fox Sports is buying the rights to the Belmont Stakes. NBC has had the Belmont for a long time. I believe before that, ESPN had it. Fox has really invested in racing the last couple of years. I think it's a great thing, especially since, the quotes from Mike Mulvihill and Bill's story about this, and we might have Mike on the show at some point. We can ask him about this directly. But he was basically talking about how he wants a bigger wagering push, a bigger push towards horse players and even just maybe sports bettors who haven't gotten involved in racing yet. And I think that's a big part of what we were just talking about, and how you build on these handle gains is whether or not you can make a concerted push to increase the handle, not just increase the number of people watching races, but increase the number of people betting on them. That's the most important thing. And, NBC does a great job with their Triple Crown broadcast and the Breeders' Cup broadcast. They do a great job, and they have added more wagering aspects with, Steve Kornacki and Eddie Olczyk and Matt Bernier. I think they've done a good job in that regard, but there still is a lot of kind of, I don't want to say fluff, because it's really good television, but it's aside from the point that people bet on the horses. Like if you watch the NBC broadcast for maybe 15 minutes in a row, you wouldn't necessarily know that people are betting on this race. And I think that's a major component to growing handle, is having a concerted thrust from the people who are broadcasting it themselves. It says, hey, this race is coming up. Here's where you can bet on it. And Fox Sports and Naira Bets have that relationship now, which I think is huge. And I think that can only be a good thing. But what do you guys think, Bill? Yeah,
Joe, I totally agree. And, the three of us, again, we watched the Kentucky, and I agree with you. I think NBC does a really good job. I really do. However, traditionally the Triple Crown coverage includes segments that Joe Bianca, Bill Finley, and John Green will go, ugh, here's another picture of a 20-something with their bow tie on and the fancy hats. Give me a break. Get out of here. I want to know what the what the superfecta is going to pay in the Derby sort of thing. And I understand there's a place for that, but I think that what Fox is doing is great, and I think ultimately they'll be more successful. And the thing that in my interview with Mike Mulvihill from Fox is they are partners in Naira Bets. And they also have their own sports betting platform, Fox Sports. So, you never really heard in the past people talking about it this way. This is a gambling event. We want to cover it as a gambling event, and we want to promote gambling on there. That's really cool. I like that. And if somebody's turned off by that and they want to, they miss all the, the shots of people in their fancy clothes and their hats and the guys from figure skating commenting on who's going to win the Kentucky Derby. Well, whatever. That's not for me.
And I love the fact that there's another entity that wants to be part of horse racing. Albeit, look, they're chasing the dollar. I get it. I'm not naive, but the main thing is that there's another major force that wants to be involved, because a couple of years ago, when everything was going on in California with the breakdowns and most recently, with certain political groups coming in and asking for our to have this industry be extinct, there wasn't anyone coming on the white horse to save us. And now with Fox coming in, that's a major statement. That they see that we have strength. They see that we're going to, be able to bring in more dollars, overall and for their platforms. So I think it's great. The old proverb of iron sharpens iron. I love the fact that there's another major force that's coming in here, because I think the competition is going to raise everyone's game.
Well, and the other thing is, too, that Fox is also, like Bill mentioned, is involved with sports betting. And, we talk to people, stakeholders in this industry all the time about how big it is to get on the sports betting platforms and to be part of that ecosystem for gamblers. And, it really helps to have that someone who's already invested in sports betting now taking an investment in racing as well, because now you have that institutional push to try to couple those two things. And it just would be kind of ironic, because I think so many people, I think rightfully so, are very pessimistic about sports betting becoming legal, because we've had this monopoly for so long on legal online account wagering that now they're going to take a huge chunk of. But in this case, it actually might be a good thing to have someone who's invested in sports betting also be invested in racing, because they can more easily marry those two things than someone trying to lobby from the outside to get those two sports together. So I think that might be a little sneaky benefit from this partnership as well. And I think it's something to be excited about. The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by XBTV. XBTV's Workout of the Week. Hot Rod Charlie put in a work at San Anito on Saturday, going 4 furlongs and 48-4 under regular rider Flavian Pratt, who now we can say is a friend of the show as well. Winner of last year's Pennsylvania Derby is aiming for the Dubai World Cup. Could make his next start in Dubai in the Keeneland Stakes in February. Alan Carasso had a story with Doug O'Neill about Hot Rod Charlie in today's TDN. Obviously, a horse that we all enjoyed watching as a 3-year-old. He did run second as a big favorite in the San Antonio, so he's going to be looking to bounce back from that. But Doug O'Neill's always full speed ahead with these top horses, so you got to expect he's heading to Dubai no matter what. And if you want to see his workouts and all of the workouts for the upcoming Pegasus and for the Dubai World Cup, for the Saudi Cup, go check out xbtv.com. We'll be right back after this message from XBTV.
Here in Pennsylvania, we're proud of our breeding program, the best in North America. But we're also proud to be leaders in this industry. The PA Horse Breeders Association is funding cutting-edge research at Penn Vet into equine health and safety. And we endorse the SAFE Act to help protect the most vulnerable horses. Plus, we're pleased to support the aftercare programs set up by our horsemen's groups. Just a few of the reasons why you should join us in Pennsylvania, the premier place to breed and race.
The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Horse Breeders Association. I want to welcome a new sponsor, the Pennsylvania Breeders. 12th annual PHBA Stallion Auction will run Saturday, January 15th through Saturday, January 22nd. Seasons include Kentucky-based sires like Accelerate, Army Mule, Dialed In, Honor Code, The Factor, and Tom's d'Etat, as well as stallions based in Pennsylvania, New York, and Maryland. Visit Thoroughbred to register prior to the auction and to learn more. Over the last 9 years, the PHBA Breeding Fund has distributed an average of $28 million each year in awards, owner bonuses, and restricted race purses. Incentives include a 50% breeder reward for PA sired, PA breds, and 25% for non-PA sired PA breds for any maiden who finishes in the money. That's big money, especially with some of the stakes and the purses they're giving away at parks. All other races offer 40% awards to PA sired PA breds and 20% to non-PA sired PA breds. So welcome aboard to the PHBA. And as I said, the stallion auction will run Saturday, January 15th through the following Saturday, January 22nd. The Green Group Guest of the Week is sponsored by The Green Group, an accounting, tax, consulting, and advisory firm specializing in the thoroughbred industry. With over 500 clients in the horse business, they have proven strategies to save you taxes. Learn more about how they can help you at www.greenco.com. So we're thrilled this week to bring on as the Green Group Guest of the Week, the host of the Jason Beem podcast over on Twin Spires, also the track announcer for Tampa Bay Downs. Jason Beem, thanks so much for coming on.
It's good to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you. Good to talk to you. And this is kind of podcast worlds colliding, I think, because Jason's podcast is extremely popular. This one is getting there. We're getting into the same stratosphere, I think. Not quite there yet. But I wanted to ask about that and how, how the genesis of that podcast came and how it's grown in popularity and maybe why you think it's grown in popularity so much over time.
Yeah, actually, Friday will be 6 years since our first show, which is kind of crazy to think about. I think, wow. You guys might be airing Fridays, but January 14th of 2016, we started. What happened was the folks at Bet America, which I don't think is a thing anymore, they had seen, I used to do a thing on Twitter called the Beamy Awards, and they had seen that. And the guy who was the boss there, Pete Laverick, he messaged me and he goes, I want to do something with you. And I said, okay, great. I said, because I'm doing Uber right now. I have no job. So, and he was like, he literally said, pitch me a job. And so I said, I would love to do a daily podcast. And he was in for it. And that was literally like Christmas. And we were up and going 2 weeks later. I mean, it really kind of came together pretty fast. And, just kind of took the model from what a lot of podcasts were doing, 20 minutes of chat and 25 minutes of interview. And then you were out. And, we've been really fortunate. I mean, people have from the business, come on the show. I mean, that's, as you guys know, getting guests is a bit of a burden. And it was funny. Somebody asked me, they're like, does it annoy you that there's become so many racing podcasts? And I was like, no, I think it's great. The more people talking about racing, the better. The only hiccup is getting guests, because now you're forcing a lot of the same people to do 3-4 interviews a week or stuff like that. That's the only kind of difficult part of there being so many shows. But no, it's been amazing. I love it. I love broadcasting, and I'll get people that'll say, should I do a podcast? I said, if you like to broadcast, do a podcast because it's fun, but don't do it because you think you should have one, because there's already a lot. And so, no, it's been an awesome experience. And when Bet America was bought by Churchill, I was kind of worried that it would go away. And Churchill told me right away, they're like, we love the show. We want you to keep doing it. And I think I'm the only person left from old Bet America. So everybody else kind of scattered, but I feel very fortunate about that.
Well, Jason, thanks for joining us. It's really great to talk to you. And I want to switch gears a little bit. You have the job now at Tampa Bay Downs, but to get there was a rocky road for you, I think, both professionally and personally. And let's talk about the personal aspects of it. And I don't think that there's a problem asking you about this, because you've been so open, and I think courageously so, about some of your struggles in life. And, basically, could you tell me the rest of the story? What was going on in your life, and why were things at one point kind of difficult for you?
I had started having panic attacks, and I was in law school at Gonzaga University. I was 22 or 3, and I was in constitutional law class and had a panic attack and didn't know what it was, and walked out of class and freaked out in the hallway. And that was, that was the start of really what was 15 or 16 years of pretty significant trouble with anxiety, ranging from doing okay to being hospitalized several times, and really struggling with depression. Depression was never a initial symptom for me. It was always because the anxiety got so bad that, you just start avoiding things and your world gets very small. And my world, I was an agoraphobic. I didn't leave the house a lot for years. And, I'd go to the grocery store at night when there was nobody there. If I had to stand in a line, like, that was torture for me. But, that it was on and off, and it would be, I'd be doing all right some years. And, when I started announcing in 2006, I was actually doing pretty well. And I went to River Downs for my first year, and that went great. And it was kind of like, maybe I kind of got this licked. And, then I started at Portland and did okay. And then my second year at River Downs, I really struggled. And that was like the first time I had ever had a real depression. And I didn't know what it was. Like I was in line at Chipotle one day, like just crying and I didn't know why. And so, I hadn't done a lot of therapy up till then. And so I started doing that and kind of learned what I was dealing with. And also that it wasn't uncommon. I think that for me was one of the biggest helps early on, was realizing that mental health issues are things that a lot of people struggle with. And, when you're by yourself and everybody in your family thinks like, why are you being so, so strange or sad or what? Like my uncle used to always say, what do you have to be sad about? Just not. And when people say that, then it makes you feel worse, right? Because then you feel like you're ungrateful or something like that. But it was a long battle with that. I left River Downs. Derby Day of 2008 was my last day there. I had really been struggling when the season started in April, and I was like, I'd call a race, I'd break down in tears, I'd be on. I had no energy. I would be on the floor. I had a what are they called? Like a air mattress on the floor at the River Downs announcers booth, just so I could lay down because I couldn't keep my body up. I was just so depressed. And I remember after the second to last race, I called my buddy Vince downstairs. I told him, I said, I can't do this anymore. And I went to the hospital. I watched the Derby with the doctor in the ER when Big Brown won. And I went home after that. And I kind of thought I was done with racing then. Like I remember looking into other jobs, and Portland, where I had been announcing, actually called like a month later and offered me a year-round position. So I went down there, and it was a lot of the same struggles down there. Portland was good in some senses. I got to kind of learn more about the management side of racing and business and all that. But it was just cycles of doing okay and then doing really poorly. And when I was doing well, when I left Portland and went to Louisiana Downs, and I was there for a quarter horse meet, and everything just kind of crashed again. I didn't know how to manage and take care of myself in regards to anxiety, especially on the road. That was a big trigger for me. And so at that point I moved home and got out of racing for about a year. And then that was when Bet America came about. Yeah.
And Jason, we appreciate it because it's certainly an affliction that a lot of us, are under and have to deal with on a regular basis. And I give you tremendous credit for being open and for talking about it like the way you are. And when you're in the spotlight like you are, not only with the podcast, but also as a track announcer, there's a lot of eyes and ears on you at all times. So how do you generate the emotion and the energy to be able to get you through, a race day and make it, so it's a great experience for all of us?
That was hard for a lot of years. In fact, I would say a lot of years I worked just in a get through it mindset, not in a let's succeed and let's, really call good races today. It was just about getting through. I mean, there was my second to last year at Portland. I called all the races from downstairs off of TV because I was scared to go up on the roof. And so, none of those race calls were good. It was just literally so-and-so's on the lead. This one's in second. This one, really going through the motions and stuff like that. But, I really turned a corner in regards to my anxiety stuff kind of in 2018. And I had been out of announcing for, I think, 3 years at that point. And Pete Aiello gave me a call and asked me to fill in down at Calder, or the artist formerly known as Calder. And, it was in the trailers that they had stacked up down there. It was a real weird situation. But for me, it was like, it gave me a chance to finish my announcing career on my terms. At least that was my thinking at the time. And it went really well. And it felt so good to like, at that point, I was just obviously kind of getting through it then as well, but it was getting through it in a good way. And like a month after that, I got offered Monmouth fill-in and Colonial it was crazy how the phone started ringing once I had those good 2 weeks. And, it's been a good few years since then, luckily, but I still deal with it. I was telling somebody the other day, like, cause I don't really take guests up to the booth, and I've had a few people like, oh, I want to come watch Riding Next Star, cause I still get nervous and I have all my little, anxiety remedy things before a race goes off. And, there was a race the other day. Oh God, this is bad. I should know his name. Golden Glider, right? The Mark Cassie horse. The Cassie horse. Yeah. Like I just had bad anxiety that day, and before that race in particular, because I knew a lot of people were going to be watching, but it was more so it just kind of happened that race. If you listen to the call, like I deliberately went very slow because I was just trying to make sure I could keep my breath because I just was getting worked up and stuff. And the rest of the day, it was kind of a slow get back to normal after that. And so those things happened. I have not had a meet since, ever, where there's not a few races where I'm a little bit antsy up, but I know how to deal with it. And for me, the most important thing is I know I'm not in any danger, because that's what used to really send me up was, my heart would flutter, or, I'd just get lightheaded or whatever. And I would go 0 to 60. I would go from I'm fine to I'm dying real fast. And, your body reacts to that thought, and then you really do feel awful. And so I've now learned that, I'm in no danger from anxiety physically. All these things might happen, but I'm not in any danger. And, if I have to take an extra breath in a call once in a while, I don't think anybody's going to care.
Right. And I know as an owner, I appreciated your call last year, the Tampa Bay Derby. That was certainly a great one for us when Helium won. And
well, I wasn't there. That was Grunder.
Forget it then. Well, then it sucked. It wasn't good at all. Other than the fact that we won, who gives a crap?
Well, John's always got to make it about him.
It's always a humble brag, Jason. Isn't that the reason why we have podcasts? Is just so we can do humble brags?
Fair, Jeff. So I wanted to ask about Tampa, and it's good that you feel like you've turned a corner with this stuff, but obviously it's a lifelong struggle. But you wouldn't know that you're struggling with anything. I think you're doing a great job, and really brought like a fresh voice to Tampa. And Tampa's a place that's a little interesting, I think, because it kind of gets overshadowed in the winter by Gulfstream and the championship meet. But they do a lot of things well. They got good takeout rates. They got a beautiful turf course, just in terms of even just some of the smallest, like sending press releases out with photos and quotes and stuff. They do a really good job. What's your experience been like with Tampa management? And what are some of the things that you think that they do well?
Oh man, they've been unreal. It's it's funny, when the job opened up, I was buying a watch. I was in the parking lot at the jewelry store, and it was like a half hour till they opened. So I was just sitting playing on Twitter, and I'd read that Richard was retiring. And anytime a job opens for an announcer, I think we at least think about it, right? Like, when Keith Jones retired, I was like, Parks, maybe, and I ended up not applying just because it wasn't. With doing the podcast, and I have Colonial's so amazing to me, and Grants Pass is great to me. So it's like, I just have such a great circuit. I don't want to foul with it at all. But you still think about it, right? And when that one came up, I was like, this is like the biggest no-brainer to apply for ever. But I didn't have any connections here. And so that in getting announcing jobs, unfortunately, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but who is important. And because it's usually somebody who knows somebody who's doing the hiring. And I didn't know anybody at Tampa other than Allison, who's the racing secretary, because she does Colonial, but I'd only met her a couple of times, and, she wasn't going to be in on the decision at all. But, I called, I gave a couple days for, because some guys will call like the second the press release comes out. I'm like, you got to let the chair get cool a little bit. But, I called a few days later, and I talked to Margot, and she had said she had heard me at Monmouth and Gulfstream West, and she said she was glad I was applying. And so immediately I was like, oh, maybe I got a shot here. And, didn't hear anything back till after Derby. And then we, I got a call, and we did the interview, and they actually offered me the job on my birthday, which was really cool. She called first thing in the morning. I was on my morning walk, and I told her, I said, it's my birthday. You cannot call with bad news today.
And she goes, well, then, on my birthday. Also,
what's that?
I got the TDN job on my birthday.
There you go.
Oh man.
Yeah.
See?
But
another humble brag from another podcast. Okay.
Sorry,
but I was bragging about getting the Tampa job. So. But no, it was. It's just been. They've been so nice to me. I mean, Margot and Peter, who's the general manager, have gone out of their way to make sure I'm happy, comfortable. It's a very familial. I mean, everybody that's worked there has worked there 20, 25 years. And that was one of the things I liked about the job. It was that it seemed, and I told them, I said, because Margot kind of said in the interview, she's like, we want someone that's going to grow with us and be here. And we don't want someone who's just trying to use us as a stepping stone. And, I said, for me, this is kind of the top, because, it is one of the bigger tracks in the way. I mean, we handled like 7 million or 6.8 or something on Saturday. I mean, it's, they're doing great business. And, but also I don't want to live in New York, and no disrespect to everybody up there. And I'm not going to, I'm not a Naira caller or a Santa Anita caller. So this is to me, the pinnacle of where I want to be in the wintertime. And it's exceeded my expectations just as a place. The area is obviously great. I mean, I found myself complaining that it was 68 yesterday, which means I'm a true Floridian now. Well, it's so funny because I went to training on Tuesday morning, and I think it was like 56 or something. It was, and I had like a little puffer vest on, but a t-shirt, and I'm from Seattle. So 58 in the morning, sign me up. And everybody, like there was guys with snow caps on. The outriders were complaining about how cold it is. I was like, if I become this soft, and then the next day I'm like, God, I'm wearing long sleeves, and it's I think the high 70 today.
So, Jason, there are many announcers out there that can get a little bit carried away, so to speak. Kind of the histrionics and the screaming. That's not you. And I think I've read that you believe that the announcer shouldn't be the story. So, what is sort of your theory of announcing, and what is your style?
Yeah, I do want to help tell the story and certainly be a part of it. I mean, to me, that was what always moved me about race callers was, I just thought they were such a part of the experience. Growing up at Long Acres, Gary Henson was our guy, and he had this, similar to his dad. He basically had his dad's voice, on the outside, here's Captain Kondo, and, and that kind of thing. But I used to just love that. And I loved, and obviously guys like Tom Durkin and Vic Stauffer that paint these amazing pictures and have these great lines and all that kind of stuff. Like, I don't think I can do that well. So A, I don't think it'd be a strength of mine, but B, I just, Frank Miramati, I remember telling me one time when I went to Monmouth, he's like, look, they don't like a lot of BS in Jersey. He goes, they really just want the call, and they don't want you talking in the gate, telling every horse that's coming in. And that always kind of stuck with me because my personality and my show and stuff and my Twitter accounts are a little more out there and a little more vocal and joking around and fun. But my race calling is pretty opposite of that. I try to stick to the books, and I want to be pleasant on the ear to the listener is to me one of the most important things. Cause I think if your voice is a little bit shrill, I think people want to just turn it off. And so if I can deliver a clean, accurate call, one of the guys who is inspired my style, I think, is Dave Rodman. I feel like everybody mentions him as like, oh, he's so underrated. And you could argue that he is. I would say since everybody thinks he's underrated, that he's not underrated. We all think he's very, very good. And so he's someone I really admire as far as a style component. But, a lot of the guys, the styles now are pretty similar. Everybody sounds a little different, but the style has become pretty, you listen back to a lot of the guys who have just retired, Richard and Keith Jones and John Curran and Tom's in a different stratosphere. So I never include him in these conversations, but, they were very unique sounding. And it's the same in like baseball too. Like those announcers from the 70s and 80s, they all had these real over the top charismatic, the idea of the catchphrase has kind of gone away a lot in recent years. And so it's things like that, they come and go. And it's an interesting thing to kind of watch because I don't think there's a ton of, and I include myself in this, like, I don't think there's anybody that's like super unique right now, at least sounding maybe like Richard was completely unique in how he sounded. Like there was never a doubt when you heard Richard, what track you were watching.
Mm-hmm. And Jason, how do you prepare for a race? I mean, it's really rapid fire from 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock. You're on the mic every 20, 25 minutes. How do you in your mind remember names, colors, jockeys, et cetera?
I'm a color. I use my colored pencils. I'd say probably about 2/3 of the guys I know color the programs. What I've learned from going and hanging out with other guys in the booth is that I'm an over preparer, at least compared to them. Like a lot of guys seem to really just take the last minute or two and do a quick scan and they got it. I'm like in there, really going over them over and over again. I'm always just petrified about not remembering the names because I know if you don't do that, you get behind or you get lost or you miss something. And that's where you can really kind of get in trouble with calling the race. But another thing too, is I've been, at least lately, doing fill-ins or doing shorter meets. This is kind of my first real long meet in a long time. And long meets by the end of the meet. In fact, I'm even finding now 2 months in, I'm seeing horses for the third and fourth time, which of course I'm not going to do at Colonial and Grants Pass. Grants Pass, we see him quite a bit, but that helps with the memorization part because you really become accustomed to who's who and the silks and all that. Like what gets tricky is when there's like, a lot of claims or stuff like that. Cause then they come back with like, I'll hear people say like, isn't it easier at Mountaineer? Cause they have the same silks every time. I go, that's worse. Like I said, Peter Barry, that seems so hard. I'll bet he'd probably tell you the same thing. Cause you do associate them, and then the next time there's something different and the next time there's something different, it could be confusing, but, no, I mean, there's a lot of prep work in that sense. You usually have a few minutes to kind of chill out and between races and, check social media or just, eat lunch or something like that. My ex, in Portland was a a resident surgeon, and she, so she worked like 14 hours a day. She came out to the races one day, and we do the race, and she's like, "Wow, that's so cool." She's like, "What do you do now?" I was like, "Yeah, we go talk to the Equibase guy for 20 minutes, and then we do it again." And she told me, she goes, "You can never complain about being tired again."
Right.
Ever.
Right. And Jason, one more. Joe, I'm sorry, just one more follow-up. So Jason, when we name horses, trainers always beg us to have it be one word, shorter the better, and something that's easy to spell.
Yeah.
Is there something like that for you? Like, do you look at the program and go, "Oh, really? Chattanooga Choo Choo against what the hell is that?" Like, do you look at the long names and just go, or are there certain names that you really like?
The funny thing is, I actually was talking about this the other day. It's funny you asked that. The ones that are like Susie sells seashells by the seashore, like those aren't as bad as when your tongue has to kind of go from a f to something in the back. Like when you have to make because then you're having to do that fast. It's not a brain thing. It's a mouth thing. And, I think the brain thing, at least, knock on wood, as a younger person right now, I'm good in that sense. But it's the mouth stuff that at least where I've had trip ups before. So those worry me more. But quick story that when I was out at training the other day, there was a trainer who was trying to remember what his horse's name was to give to the clocker. And he was going through it. He's like, "God, what is it? It's me," and then he looks at me and he goes, "We just call him Skippy." and you realize that's why trainers want the short name, because they don't want to remember Susie Sells,
Yep.
And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's fun because there's some races. There was one at San Diego the other day, Quid Pro Quo Joe Blow.
Right.
Like that, like poor Frankie. I would have just said the 7 ball.
All right, last question for me. I want to pivot back to the podcast theme for a second, because I think there's a reason that your podcast has become so successful. I think there's a reason that ours has become moderately successful. And I think it's part of it is that we're kind of easygoing. I think you do a good job of having more of a conversation than a typical interview. You get good stuff out of people. You don't take yourself too seriously, which I think is a big part of it as well. I think that podcasts have replaced traditional media in a lot of ways, but especially in racing, it seemed very pronounced, like you were saying before. What do you think are some of the things that you do well, and what do you think are some of the things that racing media in general could do better to kind of emulate that success of the podcast sphere?
I'm very much from the Howard Stern school of broadcasting, and not in the sense of, girls, but in the sense of, really just putting your life out there and being honest with people. Cause it's funny because, we'll have, good guests. We'll have Chad Brown on. We had him on once, or Steve Asmussen, or all these. And, I might get an email or two of like, "Hey, really enjoyed hearing Chad on the show." Da, 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 da. But if I talk about something that happened in my life, or if I talk to somebody who, maybe it's just an everyday horse player, but had a real interesting story, like that's where I get the most feedback and response on. And, our most downloaded episodes every week. Now, we just went from daily to 4 days a week this year. Just the schedule with the announcing just kind of was getting to be a bit much. And Twin Spires was awesome about making that concession for me. But, Horse Player Thursday was we'd always have a horse player on, or I would talk, betting strategy or theory or stuff like that. Cause I'm not a great bettor, but I have access and friends who are professionals and incredible at it. And so I pick their brains, or we'll have them on or whatever. But, that's who our customer is. And so that's usually what they want to hear. Is it cool to hear from big name trainers? Yeah, it is. But they seem to be the most invested in just wanting to become better horse players. And, I think sometimes racing media misses that a little bit. We focus a little too much on the sport, or the human connections, which there's nothing wrong with that. And there's a part for that. But I think that if we had really good dialogue, I think poker does that well. You watch the World Series poker. It used to be, Norman, Chad, and Lon McCarron, and they were great and everybody loves them, but, they weren't like seriously talking about the percentages or this or that. Like I would love to see a racing broadcast where they talk, put up a pick 5 ticket and talk about gaining equity and how this leg, this is what, and it's more about, I think this one can win. I think this one can win. And so I would love to see a little more of the deeper horse player conversations in media. And I think that's something we try to do. And that's been a successful thing for us because there's not a ton of it out there. Definitely. There's a lot of handicapping.
Yeah. Jason, we're recording this on Wednesday, the third race today at Tampa.
I already know who you're going to ask about.
Okay, let me spell it.
Yeah.
Tutan Khamunatcha. What the heck are you going to call this horse? And are you worried he's going to trip you up?
Now, he was in the second race I ever called at Tampa. He ran, if you look back, I think it's his second start. He ran during our summer meet. But I was a good studier of Egyptian history, so I know about King Tutankhamun, and so I know that it's Tutankhamunatcha.
Easy, easy, Bill.
Yeah, it was what to say. But would have said
let me say one thing about that. One of the really cool things about this job is getting to learn based off the names, because like Forvo.com becomes my daily Bible. I go there 3 times a day because it's a pronunciation website for all sorts of different languages. But you also, you Google things and you get to learn little bits of history. We had a horse recently named Thomond Park. It was Thomond. So I wasn't sure if it was Thomond or Tomond, but it was Thomond, and it was an Irish footballer stadium. Or rugby stadium or something like that. And so you just get to learn little bits about the world and language. And I really like that part of the job. And, and it is fun when you have a bit of a scary name like that in terms of pronunciation and getting it right. You take pride in that.
Listen, Jason, you're doing a great job. We really appreciate you coming on and talking to us. The Jason Beem podcast on Twin Spires, and tune in to Tampa Bay Downs. You can listen to Jason in the booth. Jason Beem, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Oh, it's a pleasure, guys. Thank you.
Great to talk to you.
Thanks, Jason. Well done.
The Green Group Guest of the Week is sponsored by The Green Group, an accounting, tax, consulting, and advisory firm specializing in the thoroughbred industry. As this week's Green Group Guest of the Week, Jason Beem will receive a free 1-hour tax consultation. Learn more at greenco.com. We'll be right back after this message from The Green Group.
Why do the most successful owners, breeders, and horsemen select the Green Group as their tax advisor? We simply save them money and know how to make them more successful. Over the past 40 years, founder Leonard Green has owned and bred some of the best racehorses in the history of the sport. His in-depth, hands-on industry knowledge, combined with cutting-edge tax-saving strategies, has produced positive results for his clientele and has made the Green Group the top-rated accounting and tax firm in the business. For a confidential and complimentary consultation, contact us at 732-634-5100 or visit our website at www.greenco.com. The Green Group, proven strategies to save you taxes. All the thrills. Fraction of the bills. Experience the power of the partnership. Change your life, make new friends, and compete at the highest level of thoroughbred racing. West Point Thoroughbreds, the gold standard in racing partnerships. Visit westpointtb.com.
The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by West Point Thoroughbreds. Joining a West Point Thoroughbreds partnership can vault you into the world of instant camaraderie among people surrounding high-class horses and stakes action for a fraction of the cost. And try to do it on your own. You can learn more at westpointtb.com. A few West Point runners put in big works this week, including Giant Game, who we remember was third in last year's Breeders' Cup Juvenile, went 5 furlongs in 59.85 at Gulfstream on Tuesday. Also at Gulfstream Tuesday, last year's Grade 3 Dwyer winner, first captain, TDN Rising Star. We all liked him a lot last year. Put in his first breeze of the year for Shug McGahee, going 3 furlongs in 37.88. West Point could be poised for one of their most successful years yet in 2022 with these guys and more, including, of course, their superstar Flightline. Flightline is so good. I feel like we could justify having another Flightline segment this week. That's how good he is. But I think we'll wait until he's closer to a race. So we're really excited about seeing him, and best of luck with those other horses as well in 2022 for West Point. One more story we wanted to touch on. This broke a couple weeks ago. The California Veterinary Medicine Board moved to suspend Jeff Blee, who's the equine medical director for the California Horse Racing Board. They issued an interim suspension of his veterinary license. And basically wanted him to recuse himself from the investigation into Medina Spirit's death and that necropsy, which is being done at UC Davis. According to the veterinary board, Blee, quote, presents a danger to public health, safety, and welfare. They said there exists a clear conflict of interest with his continued involvement in the drug testing program and investigations. The broader reasons the board gives for justifying the action includes Blee allegedly administering, quote, dangerous drugs to racehorses without a prior examination, without forming a diagnosis and without medical necessity. Now, if you're interested in the story, you want to learn more about it, go read Dan Ross's story on the TDN. It's called Blee Suspension, Medical Necessity, or Political Theater. He talks to 8 different, very respected veterinarians and practitioners in the business about what this means and why this is happening and what the potential fallout could be. Nobody covers California racing better than Dan Ross, and it's because of stuff like this. Honestly, this story confused me a little bit. It's a little bit in the weeds. My general sense from reading Dan's story and reading some of the quotes and some of the responses to it is that this is kind of like a political witch hunt. This is a little bit of a hit job on him because he is a guy who's very respected in the industry. And it's very vague, kind of the accusations they were making about him. They listed a ton of drugs that he supposedly was, treating horses with, most of which are just legal, regular, therapeutic medications. There's thyroxine was in there too, but it's a little unclear if and when he treated any horse with that ever. I don't know enough about it to have a strong opinion, but it seems to me like the kind of thing where they're trying to score political points, and there are some animal welfare advocates on the veterinary medicine board. In terms of him overseeing the Medina Spirit investigation, first of all, he's not going to be taking the samples himself and testing them himself. He's just in charge of that program at UC Davis. And he didn't train Medina Spirit. He wasn't a vet for Bob Baffert. Just to say Bob Baffert treated some of his horses with some of these medications that Jeff Blee supposedly was treating other horses with, seems like a real reach to say that he has a conflict of interest in this scenario. But like I said, I'm not super versed in the story, so I'll let Bill and John take it.
Well, I'm not really either, Joe, super well versed in it. But, reading Dan's story and reading what some other people have written about this, people I don't know, Dr. Blee, I've never talked to him, but people that do know him say he's got a great reputation, very honest guy, a straight shooter, and that this is politically motivated and somewhat of a witch hunt. One thing that Dan did write in his story was that, yes, he gave these drugs. And again, that we're not talking about, Jason Serva's Jorge Navarro drugs. We're talking about things like ace-promazine and bute that he gave to these horses. And they said, if anything, Blair was guilty of poor record keeping. So again, this is where Dan Ross would be the expert on this, but he seems to have come to the same conclusion that other people have, that this guy really didn't do anything wrong. But, I think this shows how hypercharged the whole Medina Spirit situation is. Now, they're going to have a different vet from the University of California, Davis, oversee this. He did, the California Veterinary Board gave him an interim suspension. Now, apparently, you don't need to have of his license to be the head of the equine director of the California Horse Racing Board, according to Dan and others. You don't need to be a licensed veterinarian. So he could go forward, but I guess just because they don't want us to get any messier, he has stepped aside from the examination of Medina Spirit, which, based on the way things happen in horse racing, we'll get answers on in 2028.
Yeah, I think it's just absolutely hysterical and comical that this is the line in the sand that California decided to draw when it comes to conflict of interest. You look at all the owners that are on the board and all the people that are associated with Bob Baffert in California making decisions on his behalf or for the betterment of racing. And this is where they decide they're going to draw the line as far as conflict of interest go, based on a veterinarian who has a stellar reputation because he was basically just doing his job. I mean, it's comical that's where they decided to do it. But be that as it may, maybe it's the beginning of a new trend in California where they are going to be more sensitive about legitimate conflicts of interest as things come up down the road. And with regard to to the veterinarian, whether it's Dr. Blee or whomever, the standard protocol for veterinarians on the backside is that when they go to a barn, the trainer has a list of horses and what procedures the trainer feels like should be done, what medications the trainer feels like that the horse should be, involved with. And that's the protocol. And then the vet, is supposed to take the list, go over the horse and come up with their own independent decision as to whether or not, that is the protocol and the medications that should be endorsed. A lot of them don't. A lot of them don't because of time and because of sloppiness and maybe even because they're taking a snapshot of where the horse is at that one moment versus the trainer who's around the horse, watching him train, watching him cool out, watching him walk up and down the shed row. And it's kind of a means to an end as far as, what the veterinarian's, protocol is going to be on a daily basis. So, yes, is it a little bit sloppy? Yeah, it is. I mean, realistically, the veterinarian should be doing their own investigative work and come up with their own decision making. But that's not really reality. And to call this guy out on it, when the majority of veterinarians on the backstretch are following the same protocols is really kind of asinine, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing is like they're trying to make this case, from what I could tell, that, he was doing these kind of unauthorized treatments on these horses because like the owner didn't know about it, or that, he didn't keep perfect records. That's not how it works. Like, I'm not a veterinarian, I'm not on the backstretch, but even I know that the trainer and the vet get together and talk about what the horse needs and what the horse should be treated with. So it's not one of these situations. It's not like like someone said in the story, it's not like you own your dog, you take your dog to the vet, you're the owner, you have to sign off on every single thing that gets done to that dog. The trainer is in effect, in terms of treatment, more like the owner than the actual owner. And we're actually getting some breaking news here from Sue in our chat that Jeff Blee was placed on administrative leave by UC Davis. So maybe there's more to this story. LA Times is reporting that, but it seems like much ado about nothing, at least to this point. And I wanted to quote Catherine Papp, who's a good follow on Twitter. She's an East Coast based veterinarian. She's a critic of the overuse of medication in horse racing. So she has some bona fides on this. She says that if she were practicing in California, she would be fearful of having to second and triple guess every diagnosis I made or procedure I performed. She adds that if our livelihoods and very right to work are going to be threatened and or punished unfairly, then I could not understand why anyone would want to continue being an equine practitioner in California at all. Obviously, if there's more behind this, we'll find it out in the next week, and maybe we'll be wrong. But just from what we know so far, it just seems like something that's from the veterinary board, made to look like they're doing something about corruption and about, the danger to racehorses, because Medina Spirit was such a high profile death that they want to get involved. And I don't know what their expertise or what their interests are in relation to racing. Like I said, there were a couple animal welfare advocates on that board. But so far, based on what we know and based on the reaction from the legitimate experts in the industry, it seems like this is a little bit far-fetched to suggest that he's this monster who's been drugging all these horses for all these years. I mean, it doesn't seem like the facts, but I guess we'll learn more. The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Legacy Bloodstock. If you think that 50 years combined experience in the horse business could benefit your program, give Tommy or Wendy a call. They personally advise on each horse as if they were their own. Legacy Bloodstock has 28 horses cataloged for the Keeneland January sale. They got off to a strong start yesterday with 2 six-figure colts, not too shabby, and they'll be showing their Book 2 horses out of barn 37, so be sure to drop in and visit. We'll be right back after this message from Legacy Bloodstock.
Being a small family business, I guess we're part of a dying breed. We're really grateful for the people that entrust us. We know it's a huge responsibility.
We're always with your horse every step of the way. When it comes to being at the sales ground, showing your horses, we are with your horse.
Just driving up and down the road every day, there's not a time that I don't look out and feel a responsibility to the sport, the animal, the people that come to invest in the game. I want to see as many people enjoy this sport as they possibly can, because we do have the most beautiful sport in the world.
Backstretch workers are the backbone of the thoroughbred racing industry. Without them, racing would not be possible. The New York Racetrack Chaplaincy provides vital programs and services to all the workers and their families, like Sponsor a Family, the Food Pantry, as well as other recreational activities and events. You can help by visiting our website and donating today. Every dollar makes a difference to those who give everything to the sport that we love.
All right, so that's going to do it for this week's edition of the TDN Writers Room, presented by Keeneland. The Keeneland January sale is going on right now, just kicked off in the past hour or so, session 2. It runs through this Friday, January 14th. You can see the catalog at january.keeneland.com. I want to thank Bill Finley, John Green, our Green Group guest of the week, Jason Beem, our producer, Patty Wolf, our associate producer, Katie Petruniak, and our editors, Anthony LaRocca, Aaliyah LaRocca, and Nathan Wilkinson. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week.